The frontier boxes of Operation Crusader were fixed positions in a war that everyone wanted to describe as mobile. They sat near the Libyan-Egyptian border, around places such as Bardia, Sollum, Halfaya Pass, Fort Capuzzo, and Sidi Omar, and they forced British planners to deal with an awkward truth about desert warfare. Tanks could sweep around the open flank, but armies still needed routes, supplies, and secure ground behind them. A strong point left intact could become a threat to trucks, artillery, headquarters, and wounded men moving in the rear. The frontier boxes mattered because they made Crusaders something more complicated than a dash through open desert toward Tobruk.
A box was not a neat little fort in the storybook sense. It was a defended locality, usually built around infantry, anti-tank guns, artillery, mines, wire, and prepared positions, meant to hold out even if mobile forces moved around it. In the western desert, where there were few towns and few natural obstacles, such positions became artificial anchors. They gave commanders something to hold, something to supply, and something from which to block or threaten movement. The word box can sound almost harmless, but for attackers, it meant a defended patch of desert that had to be bypassed, masked, reduced, or watched. Every choice consumed time, troops, and attention.
The Axis frontier defenses were part of the inheritance of earlier fighting. After Rommel's advance had driven British forces back toward Egypt, the border region became a contested zone of posts, tracks, escarpments, and fortified positions. Italian troops held many of these places, sometimes under German direction or within a wider Axis system, and their role should not be dismissed. These garrisons tied down British formations and complicated the offensive. A tank-heavy operation might dream of ignoring them, but a real army could not pretend that enemy infantry, guns, and observation posts behind the advance were harmless. Static defenders could shape a mobile battle by forcing the attacker to divide effort.
Halfaya Pass showed why these positions mattered. The pass was a route through the escarpment near the coast, and controlling it affected movement between the lower coastal ground and the higher desert plateau. A pass like this was more than a geographic detail. It could become a choke point, a supply problem, and a defensive advantage all at once. When guns covered the approaches and infantry held prepared positions, attacking forces could not simply flow through. In desert war, where so much seemed open, a pass reminded everyone that the ground still had gates, and some of those gates were defended by men who did not intend to move.
Bardia and Sollum carried similar importance because they sat near the coastal route and the border area through which armies and supplies had to pass. They helped define the eastern edge of the campaign, even while the most dramatic armored fighting would develop farther west around Sidi Rezek. This is one reason Crusader can be confusing if imagined as one single battlefield. While 30th Corps moved into the desert to seek Rommel's armor, 13th Corps had to deal with the frontier. One part of the army was trying to create movement, while another was trying to contain fixed threats. Both tasks were necessary, but they did not unfold at the same speed.
For British planners, the frontier boxes created a dilemma. If they concentrated too much strength against them, the operation might bog down before Tobruk could be reached. If they ignored them too completely, Axis garrisons could threaten supply lines and communications after the mobile forces moved west. The answer was to assign 13th Corps the difficult job of containing and attacking the frontier defenses, while the armored formations of 30th Corps sought decision in the open desert. On paper, this division made sense. In practice, it meant the offensive depended on separate battles staying connected in purpose, even when the units fighting them could not easily see or support one another.
This is where the frontier boxes reveal something important about armored warfare. Tanks are powerful when used for movement, shock, and exploitation, but they are not efficient tools for every problem. A tank unit sent against a prepared position without infantry, engineers, artillery, and anti-tank coordination
might suffer badly for limited gain. Mines could break up an approach, wire could channel movement, concealed guns could wait for vehicles to close. Infantry in prepared holes could survive bombardment and reappear when tanks had passed. To reduce a box, an army needed combined arms method, not just courage and engines. The desert did not abolish siege problems, it scattered them across bare ground.
The defenders inside the boxes faced their own hard reality. A box could be strong, but it could also become isolated. Once mobile forces moved past, the garrison might be cut off from easy reinforcement, dependent on stored supplies and uncertain about what was happening beyond its perimeter. This created a strange balance. A box could delay an enemy and threaten his rear, but it could also trap its own defenders if the wider battle moved against them. The men holding these positions lived with shellfire, air attack, dust, thirst, and the knowledge that the decisive armored battle might be happening miles away, while their own fight remained brutally local. The frontier fight also affected Rommel's choices. He could not treat the border defenses as irrelevant because they protected his eastern flank and helped contain British movement from Egypt. Yet he also could not leave his mobile forces tied to every fixed point, because his strength lay in counterattack and maneuver. If the British armor could be drawn into a fight near Sidi Rezeg while the frontier garrisons held firm, Rommel might defeat the offensive in pieces. If the garrisons were contained and his mobile forces were pulled away at the wrong time, the British might open the path toward Tobruk. The boxes therefore formed part of the larger operational trap both sides were trying to set. For the soldiers moving against these positions, the fighting could feel very different from the sweeping armored battle usually associated with Crusader. It involved patrols, artillery fire, minefields, infantry assaults, anti-tank guns, and the slow work of identifying where the enemy line actually ran. Engineers became essential because obstacles had to be breached and routes marked. Artillery had to suppress strongpoints and guns. Infantry had to take and hold ground that tanks could not simply possess by driving over it. The work was often methodical and dangerous, and it reminds us that even in a campaign famous for tanks, much of the fighting still depended on men moving under fire across exposed ground. The boxes also created problems of time. A mobile offensive lives by tempo, by doing the next thing before the enemy can fully respond. A fortified position resists tempo because it forces the attacker to slow down, bring up support, clear obstacles, and organize a deliberate fight. Every hour spent reducing a strongpoint might give Rommel more time to understand British intentions and shift his mobile forces. But every strongpoint left behind might become a later danger. This was the tension at the heart of Crusader's frontier battle. Speed and security both mattered, yet the desert rarely allowed commanders to have enough of both. In a broader sense, the frontier boxes showed that the Desert War was never purely fluid. It was a hybrid struggle, part mobile armored campaign and part positional fight. The same army that needed fast tanks also needed patient infantry. The same operation that depended on sweeping movement also depended on clearing or containing fixed defenses. This lesson would echo through later armored warfare as well. Modern armies often celebrate maneuver, but maneuver still depends on secure routes, protected supply, and the reduction of positions that can threaten the rear. Crusader makes that clear, because its armored drama unfolded beside a stubborn fight over forts, passes, and defended localities. The frontier boxes matter because they force us to slow down and see the campaign whole. Operation Crusader was not only the story of tanks racing toward Sidi Rezeg or Rommel striking back across the desert. It was also the story of fixed positions that shaped movement, of infantry and engineers doing hard work under fire, and of commanders trying to balance speed against security. In the history of armored warfare, this is one of the essential truths. Tanks can break open a battlefield, but they cannot make geography, supply, and fortified resistance disappear.
At the frontier, Crusader showed that even the most mobile war still had anchors, and those anchors could hold fast enough to bend the course of the campaign.